Hey, sweet souls. It's DTO in the flow, inviting you in to take a deep breath, open mouth exhale. And today on the podcast, as you are looking below, Nameless Energy. This is a 5Q interview today featuring Sara Mandel. She is Lightful Yogini 2.0 on Instagram, and she'll have a website coming out soon, saramandelyoga.com. So look out for that. And today we are live streaming. So guess what that means? If you have something to drink, stay hydrated, say cheers. It means that you can comment in real time, ask a question, and of course, naturally share. Sharing is caring. And also, you can simply comment with an emoji. It helps the algorithms. I'm sure you've heard that word quite a lot in this 21st century of living. And make sure to follow me on Instagram and go to my website, DTO Music. And I create inspirational music specifically for yoga, meditation, and breath work. I also have mentorship programs if you want to learn how to create music. And if you want to join us at this amazing place where I'm at right now, which is called Embody Costa Rica, feel free to go to our website, check out some upcoming retreats that we have. And yeah, here's where I am right now. I'm underground. This is an underground podcast. I'm in the bottom, right above Rica. I'm underground. This 2,000 square foot yoga deck here in Atenas, Costa Rica. And if anyone is going to Envision Festival, you can feel free to check out my sets. I have a set Sunday, 9 p.m. on the El Circo stage. And also, my beloved Himalaya and I get to teach on Monday morning as well as Friday morning. So check out Envision. It's an amazing festival. All right. Thank you for your presence. And today, Sara is going to be joining us in a moment. And again, let's stay hydrated. Who is Sara? Okay. Well, in the meantime, you can see what her Instagram is. Sara is, and she was born and raised in Canada. She's been living in the US for 20 years. She was a professional ballet dancer until injuries necessitated a break. She returned to her passion for movement with jazz, hip hop, personal fitness training, and eventually yoga. What Sara got hooked on with yoga was that it felt different than any previous movement practice. It was the conscious uniting of movement and breath. Sara discovered Ashtanga yoga, and it became her primary practice during doing this vinyasa flow. And she began to teach yoga during her first 200-hour yoga teacher training. And her passion for teaching grew rapidly from there. Since then, she's trained for thousands of hours with distinguished teachers all over the world in Ashtanga, hand balancing, mobility, yin, restorative, and MovePat. She's also a passionate mental health advocate. She believes that the awareness we cultivate on the mat can be taken out into our lives to help us with our daily challenges, to practice loving and accepting ourselves as we are. Yoga was instrumental in helping Sara recover from anxiety and trauma. Sara's classes aim to provide a balance of strength, mobility, and flexibility for all levels. With a focus on breath, creating space, staying present, and most of all, having a sense of exploration and fun. I can't wait to bring Sara on camera. Thank you for joining us today, Sara. How are you?
Hi, I'm great. Thank you. How are you?
So good. Glad to have you here on the podcast, Nameless Energy. And our
Thank you for
focus
having me.
is, you're welcome, talking about the origins of these empowered, beautiful, inspirational teachers around the world. And one of my favorite things to do, in addition to interviewing musicians and artists of all walks of life, is to have you understand what it is that yoga has brought to your life, which is obvious from your introduction because you shifted your world with yoga. And for me, as a musician, as an artist, it completely revolutionized and shifted the trajectory of my life, where I was creating a certain style of music, and then all of a sudden yoga comes into my world when I was in Encinitas, California, and the rest is history. Just now I'm creating music specifically for yoga, trilogy of albums. So it's really beautiful to know how powerful yoga is. So And as we probably know, everyone that's listening that already practices yoga, when it's supposed to happen, it's going to come. Whatever you're seeking is seeking you. And there's this divine alignment that takes place in a lot of our lives. Okay. So with that said, let's do our 5Q interview. Here comes question number 1 for you, Sara. Your origin story. So how did you discover yoga?
Well, I like to say yoga discovered me, just like you just were alluding to. And I discovered it in an acting class, age 28. As you heard from my bio, I have had an extensive history of movement since age 7 on, but had gotten injured and was pursuing acting and being in the film industry. Anyway, so we were doing these warm-up exercises, and what really was different for me was the breath. It was the connection, was the cueing of the breath, and I just felt so good afterwards. So after that, I began to do a VHS, dating myself here, a Rodney Yee video in my little tiny apartment in Toronto. And I did that sort of every day. And then it was kind of sporadic. I moved to LA shortly after that. I should add that at that time, I was in a pretty bad situation. I was still dealing with eating disorders from the dance world, an abusive relationship, not a great place. And so this yoga was, I didn't know what it was, but I knew there was something that I needed to keep going back to at that point. Moved to LA and did it a few times there. Moved back to Toronto 3 years later, and that's when I really began to do it regularly at a gym. And once I was doing it 3 to 4 times a week, that's when I really began to feel the benefits. I was lucky I had a wonderful teacher there. And so I just kept going. And then 2 years later, I met my future husband and ended up in the Midwest. So came here, did it for a year. And I think I started to do some Ashtanga at that point. I didn't know what it was, but it was Ashtanga. In retrospect, now I know. And then got pregnant. So then I began to do it once a week after that. But just before I got pregnant, and this will, I think, lead into another question we have coming up, but I was asked to teach to some gymnastics students here in Minneapolis, kids of all ages, but I knew enough to, throw something together. And it was after that experience, I just suddenly felt this purpose that I had never felt. It just was something different. And then I kind of filed that away in my head.
Oh, that's so wonderful. And I love that you're in an Ashtanga class and you didn't know until later. It's awesome. Well, that means you were designed. Yeah.
Yes. I'd seen Madonna doing it. I should add that. She was a big time Ashtangi.
I do remember that.
Worked with Eddie Stern. Yeah. So I saw her muscles. I saw what she was doing, and it appealed to me. And yeah.
Yeah. I know. As you said, like balance, strength, flexibility, as I read in your bio, it's really bringing all of that. And Ashtanga is a powerful pathway. And it's beautiful. And as we always know, like I'm sure there's some memes out there about yoginis and yogis. There's different styles. Of course, there's restorative yin style. And then Ashtanga is, I would say, from like spiciness of 0 to 10, like Ashtanga is a 10.
It's a 10. It's definitely a 10 or 11.
There you go. Precisely. I love it. Okay. So now that you have walked us through like how you discovered yoga, now it's a part of your consciousness, a part of your life in some regard. So moving on to question number 2. So then what was it that inspired you to teach?
So I definitely recognized the healing. As you heard from my bio, I was still dealing with a lot. And it wasn't just yoga, along with therapy and some medication and support. But I began to really kind of heal a lot. And I recognized this and just felt how profound it was. I mean, the first time I was doing here in the Twin Cities, when I was doing yoga about once a week, because I still had my little kids, I would get on my mat and I would just start to tear up every time. It's like this, because it's just with the breath and the movement, you're really accessing all these kind of old stored emotions that they don't even know where everything gets stored in your body at some someplace, and it's hard sometimes to access that. And so I really, I could see that there was something very powerful in this. And it's very common for people to do that when they sometimes when they start, just to like, they didn't even know. I was like, why am I crying? Not the whole class, just the beginning. And so so I had my kids. So I was just doing it once a week, um, prenatal, postnatal, and but I still remembered that one class that I taught and how I just felt this purpose, this wonderful sense of purpose. But the thought of teaching, and I should add, I had two, my parents were both very, wonderfully brilliant English professors. So teaching was kind of something I put up way on a pedestal. Like, you have to be brilliant to teach, and you have to be very knowledgeable. And if it popped into my head I wanted to teach, I just felt like, who am I to teach this ancient discipline? I mean, and I knew it was more than just the physical poses. It's a lot more than that. Um, so, but there was a workshop in town, Sean Korn, Off the Mat into the World, 3 teachers, and they taught, I think it was a 5-day, really intensive workshop at the yoga center here. And I decided to take it. And it was really one of those things where you're thrown into the fire. You're doing stuff way out of your comfort zone. But in that workshop, we were in a circle and we were asked to voice, I think, why we were there and I just came out like, I wanted to teach. And it was the first time I voiced it, I think, at least not to my mom or my friends. It's like out there. And that sort of began the process of me accepting, like, okay, maybe I can do this, or maybe there's no reason why I shouldn't. And what they really emphasized in that whole workshop was because I felt like, I kind of had a messed up background in some ways. And I'm not like this perfect, healthy, radiant, calm being that I thought you had to be a yoga teacher. And what was wonderful about that experience was they really, Sean Korn, would talk about how what you go through, your pain, your darkness, everything, it becomes your gifts. It becomes what you can help other people with. So that really resonated. So then I eventually decided to bite the bullet and do the 220-hour yoga teacher training here at the yoga center. And halfway into that, I was asked to teach Ashtanga. Still talk another, like, just like, okay, here we go. You're going to do it. And it's like, it's the best way, right? You have to just learn by doing. And so I started to do that. And that's sort of, after that, I never looked back. And then Ashtanga. But I wasn't just teaching that. I was teaching Vinyasa, teaching other movement as well.
Oh, I love that, because we sometimes get into these opportunities that allow us to grow. And for what you said was brilliant, where it's the experience. That's how we learn. We could read, we could watch millions of YouTube videos on practicing or teaching yoga. And once you're in it, it's a whole other thing. Even the teacher training, because I've had my 200-hour teacher training. It's that same process of, you can know particular sequences, but to be the guide for the entire flow and the energy of the room. And as you said, honoring the ancestors of this ancient practice and representing it in a really powerful way. And then with your parents being professors and instructors, and now you're embodying that role of teaching and being an instructor. I'm sure that was really powerful. So yeah, I'd love your response on how you became a teacher and what really inspired you. And I would have to say, your dharma and your karma is perfectly aligned, and it's just like, whoop, this is you, Sarah, right? And it's like,
yep.
Onward.
And it's a really funny thing. My mom was adopted, and kind of later on, she found her birth parents and her siblings, and every single one had become a teacher. It was really freaky.
Oh, that's
like,
they probably have done research and studies.
There.
Yeah, it's
right.
It's in the nature and nurture. I mean, that's a whole other podcast, but yeah.
Yes.
Oh, I love that. Fantastic. All right. So then question 3 would be, and you said you've taught different styles of yoga. So how would your students describe your teaching style?
Well, from the feedback I've received from them, they tend to say, and it makes me very happy, that I teach in a very accessible way, that I lead. I break things down with the physical postures, the physical asana, the asana to, to get you to, to get you from point A to point B, but with all the steps in between. So you have to prepare the body to do certain things. And even if, of course, it's not about getting to the mass, it's not about necessarily hitting these poses. It's about everything you learn on the way to trying to get whatever it is, a triangle, a handstand, whatever it is. It's all about what you're learning along the way. And there's just so many levels, of course. It all starts for us with the physical postures. Most people, I should say, come, not everyone, but a lot of people come to yoga. It's been recommended. They've got an injury, they've got something. And the more you do it, the less it becomes about the physical and more about everything you're learning about yourself physically, but also mentally, emotionally on the mat. And teaching Ashtanga is a challenge. Has been a challenge, even though I love it. It's my home, my original, I'd say teaching. But I do teach, as you mentioned my bio, I teach vinyasa, I teach movement, I teach mobility, I teach a lot, and just some dance in there too. But Ashtanga is a set sequence, and so there's two different, I won't go into too much detail, but there's Mysore style, which is self-guided with a teacher. And then there's the led classes. And the history of Ashtanga in the Twin Cities is a whole other subject. It's like coming on and coming on. I think it's more popular on the coasts, I would say. That takes a certain personality, tends to be driven, perfectionistic people, or a lot of dancers, ex-dancers are driven to Ashtanga to take it. But the history of it, as you know, it's gone through different phases, and for a while it got a bad rap because people were getting injured I got injured from teachers, the adjustments, and so it's really been my mission with Ashtanga to dispel, like to make it not scary, because it's very scary to people. A lot of people it's so hard, and it is if you approach it in, I wouldn't say the wrong way, but if you're not taught how to approach it, or you're just, it can be pretty daunting, pretty exhausting physically. So it is all about how you get taught. And so I'm not going to say I'm a softie, but I'd say my students will say that I make things not so scary, and for Ashtanga. And also, it's very important to me, and I know I've gotten this feedback that it's important to me that you take your yoga seriously, but you don't have to take yourself so seriously on your mat. You can take your practice very seriously, and it's one of those things that before, I did it, it's like, you have to be this, and why I didn't want to teach, like, you've got to be this serious, enlightened person. And no, I mean, there are those people, there's every different kind of teacher, there's room for everyone. But for me, I joke around a lot. I try to make it fun. It's like took a yoga recess.
I love that. Yeah, it's playtime. Let's go into the sandbox.
Yeah,
and
probably more so for advanced, like beginners, they do want a little more instruction. Once you get to the more advanced stuff, that's when you can really just it's really just trying stuff. It's the journey. It's just having fun, and yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And there's that beautiful contrast that we were saying, like vinyasa practitioners opposed to ashtanginis or ashtanga. It's like a whole other orbit world. And what I loved is when I lived in San Diego County, I think there was a friend that was having a birthday, and it was probably the most concentrated place I've ever been on the planet, where like pretty much about 20 to 30 people that were in attendance were all Ashtanga yoga teachers, or there were practitioners. And it was like, wow, they're all like, as you said, there's this like super power. There's this, regimen or this routine, this, let's call it like the eye of the tiger, the focus that's required, the drishti. So it's really awesome. And I love that you've taught different styles. So that, as I said earlier, from like the spiciness from 0 to 10, where are your students at, depending on the classroom you walk into? And then Soon we're going to talk about this retreat you're going to be offering in Mexico. So then maybe the listeners will understand like what kind of style you'll be teaching then. So yeah, and I love how the student feedback can really inspire us as you know, like that acknowledgement. It's like, oh yeah, okay, I'm glad that you see the improvements, you see the results, and then the students want to follow you around the world, right? And go to different countries, and that's really powerful. I love it.
It is.
Okay, so question number 4 is, tell us about your current offerings. So let's hear about your retreat opportunity that's titled Move and Flow Underneath the Mexican Sky Retreat, February 3rd through the 10th.
Yes, I'm very, very excited about this. I've been to this place, present moment. It's in Troncones. So it's like half an hour outside of Zihuatanejo in Mexico, on the Pacific side. It's a beautiful, beautiful place, retreat center. I know the owners very well, local people. And retreats are, so this will be a 7-day chance to go and do as much or as little yoga as you want. It's offered twice a day. Incredible food. It's right. Oh, I miss it already. I'm hungry. Beautiful yoga stage overlooking the ocean. Sunsets. You're doing the evening classes, or like literally you're watching the sunset. Or we just, we're like, let's get off the stage, go do yoga on the beach, and like just watch the sunset and do some yoga. It's one of these places, I call it, the expression is like vortex, like Sedona. It's got a very, very special, unique energy. That you can it's very, it's a wonderful place. So it's in this tiny little place. There'll be opportunities to go. There's a cave that's really incredible there. There's a cultural tour of the jungle. You've got the jungle on one side, the beach on the other. And yeah, it's just a great time retreats can really be a place to just relax, to be social, or they can be a time for a lot of people, as you know, a really deep reflection. If you're going through something and you need to just step away and maybe really connect back to you, and find some answers, or that is the opportunity during retreats as well. And you make lifelong friends, and people tend to come back to the same thing over and over and over again. So I'm really excited. This is in February, and if you're in a cold place like I am here, there's nothing better than it's 85 degrees every day. There's rainbows. There's baby turtles that we release. We go release baby turtles back into the ocean, and there's a wonderful shop there that they sell jewelry. Again, it's a great community. It's a very wonderful community, wonderful spot.
Retreats are so much fun. It just brings community together. It gives an opportunity. It's a brand new setting for many people. And I was sharing some images from your Instagram of some of these destination locations. And I always think it's very empowering for people to know that even though we were born wherever we were born, I know you were born in Canada, I was born in the cornfields of Iowa, that we get to have this human journey and we get to flow and choose wherever we want to go. And most of us have the privilege of having a passport where we can travel to a multitude of countries. And right now, as you know, I live in Costa Rica. So for me, it's lovely to be in Latin America. And I'm grateful, Sarah, that you're very much called to go to a Spanish-speaking country and the culture. And of course, in different regions, you have the Mayan culture, the Aztec, and beautiful pyramids and ruins that you can check out. So yeah, I went to Mexico in the 90s, and it was such an amazing, eye-opening experience to be with a different culture. And again, as we said earlier, it's about the experience. Like you can read about traveling to these exotic, beautiful destinations, but when you're actually there, it really supports for that growth and expansion. So as you can see, the Move and Flow Underneath the Mexican Sky Retreat is February 3rd through the 10th. And so if people want to reach out, here's your Instagram. So it's Lightful Yogini 2.0. And you can see here's a screenshot of the Instagram, and just send a direct message, and feel free to say that you're checking out the podcast with DTO and you are interested in the next step. So other offerings that you have are that you do privates, you do workshops. And then of course, I do want to share about your brand new project, which is the Be Movement Academy. Would you like to share about that?
I will. It's not my offering, but it's as the undertaking. But just before that, I just wanted to add about the
Mhm.
retreats, that it is a lot of people, probably the most popular or common question is, do I have to like be able to do yoga? The answer is no. You can come on these retreats, you can be a complete beginner, you can be advanced. I always teach to pretty much all levels of the class. Everyone will get something out of it. So I think that's an important thing for people to know, that it'll meet
Absolutely.
you where you're at. Just like yoga does, I'm gonna teach it, it'll meet you exactly where you are. So,
Hmm.
um,
Absolutely. Yeah, I love that.
yeah.
That's a great
And there's
invitation for everyone.
one more, I do have a local retreat, so you can't make it if you can't, or you don't want to fly, or you just want something in here in, if you're around Wisconsin, Minnesota, Dakotas. I have a summer retreat up in Two Harbors. I did it. I had a wonderful one just in November, I think it was December.
Hmm.
So that was more of an inside one, but in the summer there's hiking, and it's really such a beautiful place on Lake Superior's North Shore. That's going to be just like a weekend one. So I just wanted to put that one out there
Of
for any
course. Yeah.
local people who are listening, or for not. I know I had some people wanting to come from Florida, so
Yeah.
you
Fly
can come
in.
from as far away as you want. Yep. Uh, the bee movement is just something that I have begun, and my students, I'm getting great feedback from them. It's a wonderful program created by Brad Terrell, and it's combining martial arts, mobility, traditional yoga, animal flows, animal motions, primal flow, all in this incredible uh, thing he's created. So I've got level 1, and I'm going to get level 2, which will certify me to teach
Hmm.
it. And it's much more of a circular movement, less linear as traditional yoga, and it's a nice complement to traditional yoga, because we aren't just like straight, we have where things are circular, our joints, everything moves in more of a circular way, and it's just kind of getting a little more into your body. It's great if you're trying to increase your mobility as well. So yeah, that's coming up. I'm in the process of that, and I'll be offering that a lot more
Wonderful.
in the future.
Oh, it's amazing. Yeah, I love the expansion that I feel in your energetic field around, traveling and joining this, the bee movement, and recognizing, personally, my love language is collaboration. And for me to collaborate and share, and when I work on musical projects, I always love to have different studio musicians, different artists. And of course, when I play my music live for yoga classes, I always like to be able to create those soundtrack experiences for different instructors. And every instructor has their own flow, their own way of guiding. And a lot of it, I'm sure you could speak to this, Sarah, is around intuition, right? Is how do you
Mm-hmm.
really meet people where they are? And so I love the fact that you're a part of this academy, where then you can support people. And I love the new approach, where it's not this linear practice, it's the circular, right? The ball and joint. And we have, we're 360 multi-dimensional organisms essentially, right? So
Yep.
we're sometimes you think like, oh, you have to walk the straight line, that's the only way to go. And to really grow our muscles, I actually started weight training recently, and to have a whole other experience of how you can make sure that you're getting full range of motion. I think it's really powerful.
Yes.
And I'm sure, like, you experienced an injury, as you said, when you're doing ballet. I actually had a yoga injury once in my shoulder, and I recognized retrospectively that, oh, I was actually just kind of going linear. I was just like push, go, like male ego stuff. And I'm going to
Or
force
female.
it. Yeah,
Female too.
exactly. Totally. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, I'm like going to go no matter what. And so from that energy, I got to soften and be like, oh, I need to warm up. I need to like be stretching, and not only just show up on my mat once a week, but actually have that consistent practice, and other ways that we can have an experience movement. So I love that you're a part of this academy where you're approaching movement in a whole other way. So that's fantastic.
And I think for any of us, if we get to, this isn't a thing with Ashtanga, but because it's a set sequence, and you do, there's for primary series, second, third, and most people tend to do the first, sometimes second, but it's repetitive motion, repetitive, like anything. I mean, most injuries people, oh, yoga's dangerous if they see crazy advanced stuff. No, most people get injured doing repetitive stuff daily in their daily lives, not on
Yeah.
the mat, because you're mindful. Um, but um, but it's like anything, when you find a way to just bring some variety into any movement, it's going to be healthier for our bodies. Want that. They
Yeah.
adapt much better than even we think they're going to.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and to, recognize that what we've been able to learn from being in sports, if those people that are listening have been in sports, there's this intuition that we have. If we're really in our bodies, we
Yes.
know, right? Especially when you play group and team sports, like we're always going to make mistakes. We're going to be like, oh, I could have passed the ball and then we could have made that, point. There's always this flow when you're with others. And I feel unless you're playing a sport that's a single sport, like you're a golfer or you're playing, tennis, a lot of us, at least I'm speaking for myself right now, have played team sports where we rely on others, which is a beautiful skill set. But when I started my own practice, my asana practice with yoga, it's like, oh, if it's meant to be, it's up to me. And it really empowered me in other aspects of my life where I get to take responsibility for my mind, body, and spirit, my overall well-being. And that for me was a big shift. And my dear beloved friend, Dr. Tara Peterson, she taught me really just through example of her own lifestyle that having a routine is so powerful in life, a mindful routine where you're consciously,
Yes.
utilizing these ancient practices for modern day insanity and be like, okay, this is what we can add to our life. So what would you say is like one of those routines that you now have in your life that you got from being on the mat?
Ooh, good question. Other than just unrolling my
Well, maybe as a mother,
say,
maybe
what's that?
breathing, or maybe as a mother, like breathing.
Um, okay, so no, it would be taking a pause.
Mm,
So what yoga teaches, or the goal of one of the many goals, but is to be mindful, just like
mm,
meditation. I mean, of course, of yoga originally was sort of created to be able for allow us to sit still and be able to just notice our thoughts and observe and become these observers without reacting. That's been the most powerful thing for me. I still don't get it right because we're human, right? And we tend to just react. And so I have learned. It's taught me to, whether I'm in my car or whether it's not on the mat. It's just something I've been able to take off the mat into the world, is to take that moment. If something has triggered me, or something makes me angry, something makes me
mm.
even like positive, like it's just, we tend to ride the roller coaster, like, and so it allows you to step off the roller coaster for a moment and just observe and like, interesting, what's going on here. And then
Love that.
when you respond from a place more of calmness, of having thought about it a bit, and you respond the same, or you might respond differently depending on what it is. So that's huge. And just the connection with the course, the breath, with my body. Um, Being a dancer, oddly enough, I was kind of, to do the crazy stuff you do as a ballet dancer, you're kind of out of your body. You're supposed to make it look effortless, and your like feet are bleeding. So you're like, you're out. You're not in your body, really. You are and you aren't. It's kind of a very weird
Mm,
paradox. With yoga, you really have to, with the breath, you're really brought back into your body. And you get, so just taking those few breaths, like even it's just taking a moment and taking 10 or 10 deep breaths anytime throughout the day, you're reconnecting and checking in. So like yoga is like a check-in, you're checking in. Um, so yeah, I mean, I could go on.
I
There's a
love that.
lot. It's
Well, it
but
reminds me
those
of
few.
child's pose, when you're in a sequence and all of a sudden you're like, okay, now like take deep breaths. Let's take 5 juicy deep breaths in child pose. And you're there on the ground like, okay, I needed that. And then it's like, that's the pause, right? The sacred pause, we'll call it.
Yes.
Yeah. I love that. Well, thank
Powerful.
you. Well, you have one other opportunity to share any closing words, advice, and wisdom, which I felt like that was a beautiful morsel. So, anything else you'd like to share with everyone that's watching?
I do. I did want to, I think, dispel it. So people tend to ask a lot, like, or they think you have to be flexible to do yoga. That's like saying you have to already be like a great pitcher to be a baseball player. Like you don't. The whole point, you actually benefit more if you're inflexible or not mobile than someone who is, by doing yoga. So yoga always meets you. I think I said it already. This podcast, it meets you where you're at. It really does. Um, But so you don't have to be flexible to start. You don't have to be strong to do Ashtanga. I mean, you don't have to be anything. Again, yoga always, it's not your job to fit yourself into your practice. It's always the opposite way around. And also that it's just not, it's like either people think it's super easy and boring, or they think it's crazy hard and they can't do, like if people see my Instagram, they're like, oh my God, you must be such a hard, strict teacher. Like, no, not at all. That's my practice or my photos. That's not how I teach at all. And it's also not somber and like just sitting there and going, oh, this is, I mean, I think most people have more of a yoga IQ these days than the old notions. But yeah, and then people always ask, how do I start? You just, if find a local studio if you can. And I am getting my website up very soon. This has been a whole thing through COVID actually that forced me to get out of my comfort zone. Like, I don't like technology. I don't really want it, but I was forced to kind of get my act together. So I'm going to be getting my website up, and there will be a chance. So my goal is to start getting some like YouTube videos for beginner yogis. Because I think, I teach the stuff, the advanced stuff, but the privates I offer also are for anyone. They're for beginners. And I do virtual, or I do in person if that's possible. And I'll also travel anywhere to teach workshops. So I've already gone, I taught one in Orlando, at the Ashtanga weekend in Orlando. Yeah, I'm happy to go anywhere to teach, because I do love traveling so much. And connecting, as you said, community is really what it's all about. There's nothing like it. And so, having that, if you're someone who has a studio, you're bringing people in, or I'll come to you. It's really, really, it's the best part of it. And it's like this, like we just discover all these things we have in common. It's amazing, to create these, it's connection. Yoga is connection. So unity and connection. So it's all about.
Yeah. And I love the lightful yogini 2.0. Feels like it really, it's always about being the light, and the lightness of not needing to stay somewhere where we're flexible. We're able to live in this extraordinary time and place where there's these technologies where we can travel around the world, and we can, you don't have to only live and die within a 10-mile radius of where you were born, like, however many centuries ago, where it's pretty much you only knew the small town that you were in, unless you were nomadic, of course. But nowadays it's so powerful, and I love the lightness. And I feel that, I'll speak for myself, when Himalaya and I moved to Costa Rica, we donated, got rid of, or sold 95% of our belongings. And that whole process of like non-attachment really came into flow for us. And it's like, only really have what you need, be as light as possible, and also in your thoughts and your ideas. So I want to show this awesome video, because it's probably is snowing where you're at, or has snowed if you're in the Midwest. So I love how you're out in nature, which is really your invitation for people to be at your retreats, and to go and explore and be playful and celebrate. So make sure everyone out there go to Lightful Yogini 2.0. And if you DM, you can learn more about the retreat called Move and Flow Under the Mexican Sky Retreat, February 3rd to the 10th. And thank you so much for your presence, your wisdom, Sara, and grateful to be connected. And if anyone out there enjoyed the show, then please share it. If you'd like to be a guest, as always, you can reach out to me directly at DTO on all social media platforms. You can also go to my contact page at dtomusic.com. And if you're interested to come to one of our retreats, these global retreats that Sara and I are big fans of, you can go to our website, embodykostarica.com. Thank you so much. I appreciate you, Sara. And I look forward to, oh, you're so welcome. And I look forward to seeing your upcoming expansion, your growth, and all the success that is already here, and it's all happening. So thanks again. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.